Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to another episode of the Lake Cities Podcast with Chris and Lucas. Chris Respis, welcome back from Thanksgiving, man.
Hey, man, I'm full as a turkey.
You know what? I think you're the only person that I know that had a Thanksgiving meal and showed up in better shape than you left in.
Man, you should stop lying to these good people.
Well, we just want to welcome all of y'all back from your Thanksgiving holidays. We know that that's going to have all kinds of new and fun challenges because of COVID. And to talk to us about some of the new and fun challenges that are coming up as 2020 comes to a close and 2021 begins is the chief of the Corinth Police Department with over 40 years of policing experiences, Chief Jerry Garner. Thanks for joining us today, bud.
Good to see you. Glad to be here.
Well, Jerry's got such a good radio voice. I feel intimidated.
Listen, I know, man. I'm over here thinking like, okay, make sure I speak clearly.
Yeah. It's a different dynamic. When I'm in the pulpit, I can be charismatic, but on the radio, it's just not the same.
I hear you.
So, Jerry, welcome to the show, and just greet everybody again so we can hear that smooth voice.
Well, I appreciate your inviting me.
There we go.
I enjoy doing this. This is the most important part, and I think the most fun part of a police chief's job is getting out to meet the community.
Well, we're thankful that you're here today,
Absolutely.
and I'm getting some Paul Harvey vibes. So, talk to us a little bit. How did you end up as the police chief of all places, Corinth, Texas? How did that happen?
Well, it's kind of a strange tale, I guess, but this is I'm working on my 51st year in policing right now.
Man.
And grew up in San Angelo, out in West Texas. Started my police career after I graduated from college at Angelo State. Was a policeman for 3 years or so down in Victoria. Was a policeman for a while in San Marcos.
Okay.
And then we went to Colorado for 40-something years.
Wow.
And policed there at a place called the Lakewood, Colorado Police Department. It was a very unique department.
Okay.
And I was there for 30 years with Lakewood. Went from officer to division chief. And Lakewood was unique in that they were hiring college-educated officers.
Okay.
And at that time, and that was 1973, that was unique in law enforcement to have a college degree. So spent my time, retired from Lakewood, decided I wasn't quite done yet, went up the road to a little place called Fort Lupton, Colorado, population about 8,000, was their chief for a couple of years or so. Then went a little further up the road to Greeley, Colorado. And Greeley is a city of over 100,000.
Okay.
And I was their police chief for 12 and a half years. Retired again, moved back to Texas. My wife and I are both native Texans, so we wanted to get home.
Oh, yeah.
Sat out in the country for about a year, got bored, decided maybe I had something to offer yet. And Corinth was needing a police chief about that time.
Wow.
And here I am.
All right.
Well, I've got some friends in Greeley, Colorado. That's quite a little place to end up. I've got actually a friend of mine is a firefighter in Greeley now. He used to be a UFC fighter. We did some ministry work together. So Ron Waterman, who will not be listening to this until I tag him in it on Facebook
right.
so that he gets his attention. So, so from San Angelo to Greeley, Colorado, and now to Corinth, Texas. What have you felt now having, you said you were in Greeley for 40 years?
For 12 and a half years.
12 and a half years, okay. So what has changed since you've been back?
Well, I think the biggest change that I've seen, for example, a couple areas here. The biggest change between Greeley, Colorado and Corinth, Texas, or the Lake Cities area, Greeley had lots of violent crime. Mm-hmm. There was lots of stuff going on in Greeley. Had gang issues. We had, for example, over 500 listed gangsters in that community. It was very, very busy for a police department. There were lots of shootings, homicides, etc. So coming to Corinth was like night and day.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I don't think a lot of people realize is that even though we're in a very nice area here in the Lake Cities, everything that happens in a major city happens here in the way of crime as well. Everything from rape to homicide to drug deals, armed robberies. We had, for example, an armed robbery in Corinth last night. Wow. We have the same things that the big cities have, except in a much, much lower volume, which, of course, certainly improves the quality of life.
Sure.
But I don't think sometimes people who live in the Lake Cities area realize that your officers aren't out here just hiding behind bushes to write tickets. There's real police work to be done out here too.
Right, right. You know, that's good to hear because I think there is this sense that in a suburban community, smaller suburban community, that those things are over there.
Right.
those things out there. That's not really where we live, and it can lull you into a place to where we take for granted, the services that are being provided to help keep us safe, and quite frankly, the fact that we need to be conscientious about that,
right.
As we're going about our day.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things we had the opportunity to talk to Chief Corolla, I guess it's probably close to a month ago now.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the way that y'all's departments work together. And that seems to be a unique thing, not just to smaller departments in particular, but with the Lake Cities, that larger departments, it doesn't seem like have the same style of cooperation that you guys do, because maybe there's not the interdependency, or how would you phrase that?
Well, it's survival, basically, because when you're a smaller department, you don't have the resources that a Dallas or a Fort Worth or even a Louisville has. So you have to cooperate with the other agencies, because situations will come up where I don't have enough officers to handle it, and I can get help from Lake Dallas or Hickory Creek, and it works the other way too. We'll come and help them, and that in the end saves taxpayers money, because we have to hire less cops, because for those unusual situations, I can get cops quickly from somewhere else most of the time.
Right.
So you have to have that support of each other. You have to work together.
Yeah.
How is it that you think policing has changed? And let's narrow it down just over the last 5 years. Because I think even, if you were to look back over the last 10, there's been a tremendous amount of change. But just over the last 5 years, there's been a considerable amount of pressure put on police departments in general. How do you think policing has changed, and where do you see the future of community policing going?
Right. And even taking it past the 5 years, I've been in this for over 50 years, and the professionalism of law enforcement has greatly increased over that time.
Okay.
It's increased over the last 5 years, but right now we're dealing with the situation where too many people don't trust us. Right. And some of that we brought on ourselves by doing stupid things, to put it bluntly. And law enforcement is like, not to tell you something you already know, but it's like any other profession. Whether it's doctors or lawyers or priests or teachers, there are bad people who don't belong in the profession. They're very, very rare, but there are folks that don't belong there. And when they do something wrong, whether it's, let's say it's a priest or a teacher or a cop, because people don't expect that of them, it's going to get a lot of attention. It's kind of like the man bites dog story. It doesn't make news that a dog bites a man, but if a man bites a dog, that's news.
Top. Yep.
And if corrupt cops, or you could put this to the other, put it to the other professions, sure. Bad doctors, bad ministers, whatever. If bad people in the profession were common, it wouldn't be news.
Right.
Because it is unusual. It's news, and it should be news. The good news, I think, for us is that when you think about it, law enforcement officers in the United States make hundreds of thousands of contacts every day, hundreds of thousands of contacts. Very, very few of them go bad.
Right.
And that says something, I think, about the profession. But the ones that do go bad are the ones that get attention.
Sure.
And, when you're in your pity me mode, which police chiefs get into from time to time, you think about, hey, because some joker 2,000 miles away did something stupid, I'm getting painted with the same brush that he is. Mm-hmm. And I have literally had people tell me in the past, I know you're just like the cops in Ferguson, or you're just like the cops in, fill in the blank, wherever.
Right.
And you have to make the point, no, we're not. Right. We're your cops, and we don't approve of that either. So one of the things that I think over the last 5 years, narrow it down even more, over the last year or less, we're being called upon more, and we should be, for accountability, accessibility, and prove to us that you're doing what we expect you to do.
Right.
And, I've had people tell me this must be a terrible time to be a police chief. Actually, I think it's a pretty good time. It's challenging because you have a chance to make some changes right now.
Right.
And I would be, and any honest police chief would tell you, law enforcement needs to make some changes. I'm just speaking of my department, Corinth, but I don't think it's any different anywhere else in the Lake Cities area. I have some terrific, terrific people.
Yeah.
But right now, because of the publicity that some bad cops who did stupid things are drawing on the whole profession, one of the biggest issues for me right now, and it's the same across the country, and you talk to the police chiefs here in the Dallas metro area, they'll tell you the same. It's extremely hard to hire exceptional people to be police officers. And the only ones we want are the exceptional ones.
Right.
A young man or woman will tell you, why should I take that on myself? Why should I accept all that hatred on me or my family? Well, maybe they're exaggerating a little bit.
Sure.
Because we get huge support here in the Lake Cities area. But I can see a potential police applicant saying, I don't need this.
Right.
I do not need this stuff. So the people you want being your police officers, it's getting harder and harder to find them. So if you were to ask me, what is the biggest challenge you're facing today, and I kind of anticipated you might ask me that,
yeah,
it's being able to fill the positions with exceptional police officers. I have 4 vacancies. I have had 4 vacancies for quite some time because it's not that I can't get applicants. I can get applicants, but when you start doing their background investigations and you put them in front of an interview board, you have a polygraph done, you have them sit down for about 4 hours with a police psychologist, they're washing out.
Gotcha.
They're not the people that you want to be your police officers.
Gotcha.
And that atmosphere in the country, like I say, part of which we've brought on ourselves, is making it very hard to get the kind of people you want to be police officers.
Well, Chief, I appreciate you being so transparent with that. And I also appreciate you sharing your commitment and those in other chiefs, other departments, their commitment to get exceptional people, because I do think our natural inclination is to attribute sometimes motive even to people who don't deserve that kind of treatment, but to assume that everybody's just alike, and you just kind of grab some bruiser who, was willing to come to work and give them a badge and, give them the authority to use whatever, means may be available to them to resolve a situation. And so just to hear that, the quality, your commitment to the quality of officers is such that you're toting 4 vacancies.
I think, Pastor, one of the things that has always impressed me, that even with the amount of information that's out there, and I should say misinformation that's out there, I am always surprised at the lack of knowledge in the general public about what police are and what police do. And one area is what it takes to get to be a police officer at an exceptional police department.
Right.
The problem that an applicant faces for example, we want to see if you're serious about this. The application form is 44 pages long.
Oh yeah,
that'll put you to work.
Yeah,
and then the background investigation, where we want to turn up, anything from that you did when you were a Boy Scout or in the 6th grade, and I'm exaggerating a little. A thorough background investigation. As I said, we do a polygraph, we do a drug screen, and we also sit you down for a very thorough investigation from a police psychologist. And you have to go through an oral board of experienced officers who have probably heard all the answers that somebody could come up with on why I want to be a cop. And if you're still in the process at that point, in my department, and that's not unusual for smaller departments, you get to sit down with me and convince me that I want to hire you as a police officer. And as any police chief will tell you, a lot more people apply, even today, than get hired.
Right.
And I want the cream of the crop. I want the people that are at the top. The problem I face is that's what most all of the police chiefs want.
Right.
So I'm competing with every other department in Texas to try and get the best people in here. And when you're a smaller department, you can't pay even, let's say, what Denton or Louisville pays.
Right.
And yet we're drawing from the same pool, or trying to.
Sure.
So a young man or woman, maybe, rather than looking at the activity on the street, is just looking at the dollars.
Right.
And I can go 10 minutes either way down the interstate and make more money than I'll make in Corinth or Lake Dallas or Hickory Creek. So why would I want to come to your department? Right. So it takes, a certain type of individual. Sometimes we're able to attract folks that have been at other departments and just didn't like the atmosphere. I'll give you a classic example of an officer I have who's just made sergeant recently. He was a Dallas officer for years. And he was telling me the other day, he says, one of the things I like about working in Corinth is most of the time people are actually glad to see you show up. And that's not what I experienced in Dallas, which tells you something.
Yeah.
So you have folks that are looking for sometimes less action and a chance to get out of their car and talk to people and help people, and are not looking to drive 100 miles an hour and shoot guns and rappel off of buildings, et cetera. And those are the folks I want.
Absolutely. Well, it's impressive. I'll pass, but it's impressive to me to know that the level of care and the expectation for quality, even at this level, it's a small community, whatever. I really think that's important, that people understand that these are just not folks you're grabbing off the street, but that you're taking them through quite an extensive process to ensure that they're the right kind of people to serve the Lake cities.
And before they can even apply to us, they've already been, because we're hiring only licensed or certified people right now, they've already been through a month's long law enforcement academy, hundreds and hundreds of hours they've had to sit through, everything from handling the mentally ill to the physical skills, firearm skills, driving skills, but what we call the soft skills too. How do you work with emotionally disturbed people? How do you de-escalate a situation?
Right.
And that's huge today.
Absolutely.
For want of a better term, the soft skills we're trying to do a better and better job at. Yeah. And that's what you're seeing a call for nationally. How can you keep from getting to a situation where you have to use lethal force?
Right.
And that's what we're all trying to do a better job at.
I've heard both from you and Chief Corolla that there is this dynamic in policing that is changing from, you were talking about the guys that want to scale walls and that kind of thing. That we're no longer looking for Wyatt Earp or the lethal weapon guys or, bad boys or any of that stuff. You're looking for community-oriented police officer and someone to fill that role. How has COVID-19 changed the way that you have had to interact with the community when your identity is now becoming a community-focused organization?
Sure. Well, the COVID thing, and I think we've been talking, Pastor, a little bit earlier about some of this. One of the things that's big to us, that's huge, if you want to do community-oriented policing, you go out and you meet people, and you pet the kids on the head, and you stick badges on their shirt, and you talk to their parents. You stop if you're driving down the street and there's kids out in the yard and talk to them or whatever, and you go to meetings, civic groups, educational groups, what have you, and you interact with people.
Right.
And the COVID thing has caused us, like virtually everything else, to have to pull back. We don't, for example, right now do tours of our police station. It's just not the COVID-wise thing to do.
Right.
But it's harder to do community policing when you're pulling back from the community. This is the worst possible time to have to pull back from the community. So we can't wait for this COVID thing to get behind us so we can get back out doing what we like to do. We like to do coffee with a cop, something simple. On a Saturday, have a few hours at a coffee shop, meet people, and we've had to put that on hold. Our Citizen Police Academy, which is great for meeting the public. One of the best things police agencies ever did was Citizen Police Academies. We've had to put that on hold because you just don't want to get a room full of people together closely for 3 hours at a time. So
what
it's
is
killing us.
A Citizens Police Academy? Because when you say that, I automatically think of the Citizens on Patrol version of Police Academy, which I think was like Police Academy 7 that I wore out on VHS tape. And so I don't think Tackleberry and like the little lady that was his partner is what the Citizens on Patrol is. So what is a Citizens Police Academy?
Oh, that's a really good question. And what you do in a Citizen Police Academy, and right now we've combined ours before we had to shut it down with Lake City's fire. So we have a combined police and fire academy. But to answer your question directly, what you do, ours, for example, runs about 10 weeks. And every, let's say, Thursday night, you meet for 3 hours, and we try and keep a class to about 20, maybe a little more in size.
Okay.
And we get to talk about everything that you do in police work. How do you do drug investigations? Canine, what do you use canines for? How do you do traffic stops? And we let them do some practical things. It's not just talk. Let's get out in the parking lot, and we're going to let you guys do some traffic stops and see if you get yourself killed out there doing a traffic stop. Just kidding, of course. The guns aren't real.
In simulation.
Yeah. Exactly. We try and talk about everything that cops do on the job. And the good part of a Citizens Academy is the people that teach it are the cops that actually do it. The folks that do this for a living. They get to come in and talk about it. And you have some cops that love to talk about what they do and others that don't. So the people that you get are the ones that enjoy talking about what they do.
Right.
And I've been involved with Citizen Police Academies since 1989. I can remember that really, really well. I have yet to run into anybody that didn't tell me they had a good time. Wow. And we have turned around some people that, well, I don't trust the cops, I don't like the cops, and come out of it at the end saying, you know, I have a whole new appreciation for what you guys do.
Wow.
And we have deliberately in the past put some people in the Citizen Police Academy that don't like us. I'm mad. I'm still mad for the ticket I got 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, okay, why don't you come to the class? It's free, and see what we do with traffic and why we do the things we do. And it will turn. I had one fellow, not here, tell me that, well, I still hate the rest of the city, but I like the police now. If that's the best I can do, okay.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
You got to win them over somehow.
I know,
right?
That's right.
Exactly.
That's it. Why not make them feel a part of it?
But, you know, you were making a good point also about, because it sounded like maybe I was putting down the guys that, you know, like to rappel down the sides of buildings and kick in doors and do that kind of stuff. What's interesting, there's been an argument in police work for several years about the warrior versus the guardian. Are you, as a policeman, are you a warrior or are you a guardian? And what we're trying to teach is, and what we're trying to hire is, it's kind of like the sheepdog. I'm a guardian. I'm guarding the flock. But when a threat comes up, I can be the warrior.
Right.
Yeah.
And we need you to be able to do, and that's not everybody can do that. We want you to be that guardian who's out here, you know, petting the kid on the head and talking to people. But when the bad guy is robbing the store or the bad guy is assaulting someone, you can turn into the warrior temporarily in order to get his situation under control, and then go back to being the guardian again.
Yeah.
That's not everybody can do that. And that's tough too. We want you to be able to do the soft skills with the realization that even here in the Lake Cities area, there are real bad people that come through here that are willing to kill you if you give them the opportunity to do that. And for maybe a young person who's going into law enforcement, you know, for the first time, that's kind of hard to swallow. That you're telling me I have to be nice, yes, but there are bad people that could try and hurt you or kill you, and we expect you to defend yourself against them. That's sometimes asking an awful lot, but that's what we ask.
Yeah, yeah. So, Chief, let me ask you, you mentioned soft skills and have said that a couple times. You know, in light of all of the national coverage of some horrific things.
Yes, sir.
That included law enforcement. There have been these cries for defunding the police and, you know, the spectrum of what people think that means, you know, is from A to Z. I don't want to get there, but what I do want to ask is, you know, you mentioned about being able, how do you approach, how do you handle, how do you deal with someone that has a mental health issue? How has that expectation affected, you know, policing, or at least, you know, you're incorporating it in terms of the training that you're giving your officers, but do you feel like that's outside of the scope? It is what it is, and so you got to plan for it, or you know, how is that expectation that you're to be, you know, able to discern what's a criminal matter and then what's a mental health matter?
I think it's easier for the young people that are coming into law enforcement to realize that there's, again, talking about that guardian most of the time and occasionally the warrior, that's easier for them to grasp than maybe it is somebody who's been in law enforcement for a long time, and this is what I was taught back in 1980, and this is what I've been doing, and that seemed to work, and now you're asking me to do something else.
Right.
And, you know, what we're saying back is, but what you were doing didn't always work that well.
Right.
That's why we're trying to do things a little differently now. So I think it's easier for our younger officers to grasp than it is maybe than the old fogies like me that have done it another way for a while and haven't figured out yet that, you know, gee, if I don't get into fights and I don't have to go to the emergency room and I don't get hurt and my prisoner doesn't get hurt, it's easier. By golly, it's easier all the way around.
Yeah.
But you know, and in saying that, it's kind of like talking about we're always going to need the person who can do the guardian role and jump off the side of buildings and do things like that. It's important to realize, I think, that because of the nature of law enforcement and what people call on us to do, there will always be situations where force has to be used.
Yeah.
There will always be uses of lethal force. You can't get around that because there's nobody else in society that's been tagged with the responsibility of protecting us from the very dangerous wolf that's after the flock. The guy that's coming after somebody with a gun, somebody's got to protect the innocent, and that's going to be us.
Right.
And sometimes it's going to end badly for the bad guy, hopefully not for the good guy, but there's always going to be those situations. So for anyone to believe, if we all clap our hands and believe in Tinkerbell and ponies and unicorns, that the police will never have to use force, that's not true.
Yeah.
That will, I don't believe, ever be the case, certainly in my lifetime.
No, that's
it's not human nature.
Right.
So then our idea for the unicorn force is out. It's not going to help. It's very unfortunate.
It might be it's a nice theory, but I just don't see it happening.
No, that's right.
All right, well.
But we do need help. One of the things I'm reading about is, well, maybe the police shouldn't be going on these mental health oriented calls. We would love to give those calls to somebody else. We'd love to do that. But some of them are people that are dangerous at the same time they're ill. Most people that are having emotional issues that are mentally ill aren't dangerous to anyone, but some of them are.
Right.
So if you're sending two 21-year-old graduates out there in a pink car with little green lights on top to try and handle these mental health calls, and the first guy they run into is somebody with a great big knife, somebody's going to want to know where the police are.
Oh, that's right.
We can, and I'm trying not to be facetious, but we can use help from any place we can get it, particularly with working with the mentally ill.
Yeah.
I just had this vision of like Reese Witherspoon from Legally Blonde just rolling up to a mental health situation. I'm sure she could figure it out. What do you think is, you talked about the changes you've had to make in hiring and the way that policing has changed over the last several years. What do you think is the thing that is standing in the way of a lot of people of making a commitment to going into law enforcement? Because I remember when I was young, there was still a group of my friends that we grew up and we knew that, these one or two guys, they were going to be cops. That's what they wanted to be their entire lives.
Right.
So what do you think standing in the way of young people today from making that same kind of decision and commitment?
That's easy, and we were already talking about that. The perception, some of which has been put out there by media, some of which has been put out there by politicians who are trying to make hay off of it, part of it being put out there by folks who just don't like cops. And in some cases, they may have a very good reason for not liking some cops. But the drumbeat that's steadily come from the media and a segment of the politicians that police are bad, as I say, why would a young person want to be a police officer and hear that constantly? They're being told cops are bad. So why would I want to be something bad? I'll go out and do something else. I'll go be a firefighter. Everybody loves firefighters.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say that you do find a young person, maybe somebody who comes through the Citizens Police Academy.
Yes, sir.
That seems to have all of the qualities that you want. That as he's gone through 6 or 9 hours of these classes, and you've had some time to interact with that person, and you're like, you know what, this is the caliber of person that I would love to have on the force. What would you, if you were having a conversation with them, what would you say to try to convince them that law enforcement is a good career path for them?
Right. I would talk to them about the opportunity to help people, and that may sound again trite. But here's what you have a chance to do. You have a chance to change some lives. You have a chance to protect people. You have a chance to save lives. You can go out there and literally be a hero without trying to be a hero. You can do good things. You can make the world better from your having done this. The same thing, same reason that people go into medicine, for example, where some people going to being a lawyer, I can make things better. We literally can make things better for folks. Sometimes we get called because there's nobody else to help someone. And, I've gone on a call as a policeman in the middle of the night where an elderly guy's toilet was overflowing, and I'm not making this up, and he didn't know how to stop it, and he had no one to call but 911. Now, is that a police function to go fix toilets? Probably not, but I went, and we fixed his toilet.
Wow.
Yeah, a chance to help, to make a difference.
Yeah.
That's what I would advertise to them. Here's a chance to make a difference. Those are the folks I want to hire. I'm still going to need folks that are capable of kicking that door or rappelling down the side of the building on rare occasions. But what I want is people who are willing to help people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's grand. And those are the accounts that we don't hear about, right? You know, nobody's writing those articles anymore and running those at the end of the news.
Yeah, nobody's giving the Yelp review for the Corinth PD with 5 stars. And no, they were great. They, walked my kids to the car, helped me carry my groceries. And even though those are things we've seen officers do, those aren't the stories that get covered, because those are the day-to-day niceties and the little things you're talking about that really do help make the community that you're policing in a better place.
And one of the things that I appreciate, and I tell everybody this every chance I get, in the 50-plus years I've been in law enforcement, I have never seen support for the police like we get here in the Lake Cities area. Every day when I go somewhere, somebody, sometimes several people, will say, "Thank you for what you do. We appreciate it. We're sorry for the brickbats that are getting thrown at you these days. You don't deserve it." I get that every single day, sometimes more than once a day. People are constantly bringing food, or in the summertime, water, what have you, to the police station. And I know the other departments experience the same thing. Little kids coming in with cookies that they've made. And again, here's a difference. My Dallas officer told me, because of the environment we worked in, maybe we were wrong, but the environment was somebody would bring us food to the station. We'd thank them, and we'd throw it in the trash.
Oh, yeah.
Because we didn't trust it. Here, we eat it.
Yeah.
Because we trust our community.
Yeah. You had mentioned several months ago when we got together at the See You at the Station rally to pray for the Lake Cities community, and especially for our first responders, that there were things that the smaller departments were doing, because you guys have the ability to make adjustments quicker, because you're not having to make an adjustment for 4,000 or 5,000 or 40,000 officers, and in some instances that you're making adjustments quicker, and you as smaller departments are becoming the leaders in certain types of metrics and in certain types of thoughts in modern policing. What are some of the areas that you think Corinth is on the cutting edge of what the future of policing is going to be?
And that gets back to something we've been talking about here for a while. One of the things we really emphasize to our people, and we're not different from other departments around us, I don't think, but we try and do it really well, is simply get out and meet people in a non-enforcement setting. Whether it's at a restaurant, go over and talk to some. One of the things I love to do is go over and talk to people. Mm-hmm. Again, COVID is cut into what I can do.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But what we think, and we're not saying we invented a better mousetrap. It's just common sense of try and connect with people. Try and get out and talk to folks when there's no reason to be talking to them that's police related. And I've actually, I'll go up and talk to some folks. Nowadays it's harder. And I'll walk up to them, like in a restaurant, and they're surprised, because the first thing, what did I do? Why is he here? And they can see when you're not wearing a mask that you're smiling, and you just want to talk to them a little bit. And that kind of thing, when you've got smaller communities, the word spreads. The cops over here they're generally nice.
Right.
Now, I didn't like that guy that wrote me the ticket the other day, because he wrote me a ticket.
You're right.
But overall, they're nice, and I like them. And I even have people call me and say, "Hey, your officer wrote me a ticket. I didn't particularly enjoy the ticket, but he was really nice." And that's what if you're a police chief, that's what you want to hear.
Absolutely.
So I'm not claiming we invented it, but just trying to take it further as far as relating to the community and non-enforcement type things. Every time you stop somebody doesn't mean you have to write a ticket. Just, hey, you were doing this or you were doing that. You shouldn't be doing this or that. We want you to stay safe. That type of contact.
Yeah, there's a story our children's director tells, that when her son was early on in grade school, they asked, what's your favorite thing about your mom? And he wrote down, "She says no with a smile on her face." And it's so important to see that kind of thing can leave an impact, and there really is. And I've gotten a few tickets in my lifetime. Hopefully not anymore, now that I'm married and responsible and all those things. So, but the interactions that you have with those officers, like like you said, I hated getting the tickets, but I knew that I was in the wrong, that I was going too fast or ran a stop sign or whatever. But the officer's attitude completely changed the way that those interactions went, and how apt I was to, face the consequences instead of a fight and argue and those kind of things.
Right,
so,
and that can go a long, long ways. It's kind of like, occasionally, I'll have the opportunity that somebody will call me and say, your officer wrote me a ticket, and I was guilty, but this particular officer he was kind of cold. He was kind of robot-like. I mean, he didn't do anything wrong, but he didn't smile, and he wasn't very friendly, and he did his business professionally and left. And what I will ask the officer is, hey, assume, the old golden rule thing. Assume that was your mama or your spouse. Mm-hmm. How would you like the cop treating them? Could you maybe loosen up just a little? Mm-hmm. Maybe smile just a little. You didn't do anything wrong, but it could have gone even smoother. And then that person maybe would be telling me what a great cop you were instead of, he didn't smile. He wasn't very friendly.
Right.
Did the officer do anything terrible? No, but he could have done better. Mm. And I'm sure I have been guilty as a policeman when I still wrote tickets and did police work of the same thing. Sometimes you just need, as a police officer, to stand back and kind of look at yourself. And, how am I coming across to people? And sometimes we all can get a little badge heavy. And that's when you need to kind of pull yourself in and say, hey, calm down a little bit. Just calm down a little.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's part of what you try and do to do a better job as a police officer.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's that called? Being meek? Is that the right word? Is that it's power and authority under control?
Yeah. I think that says it very well.
So, Chief, let me say, we all got together, all three of us, after the George Floyd incident.
Yes, sir.
And I'm still very grateful to the both of you all for helping us to, address a very difficult topic at a difficult time for our community. But I have, just have such a great deal of respect for you.
Thank you, sir.
Because all throughout that ordeal and the months afterward, you never stopped, trying to help us find an opportunity where you can address those that were, maybe more concerned about it. And I appreciate that, because in this community, in a smaller suburban community, as we said at the beginning of the show, we can say, oh, that's their problem. But I think, Chief, whenever our leading police officer is proactive, not only in terms of reaching, segments of the population that might be directly impacted emotionally, even
yes,
by some of the national events, but also being proactive in adjusting and pivoting in the department, making changes, being committed to the search for quality within the department. It really helps to address and allay some of those fears, some of the concerns. And I just want to tell you, I've emailed you on this. I just want to tell you to your face that how much I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir.
How much I appreciate you taking the initiative, because to be honest, it wasn't me going to the chief. It was the chief coming to me. And it'd be one thing if it was just around, the time that the events were happening, but it's been subsequent to that, and many times, leading up to today. And so I just wanted to tell you thank you, and thank you for leading in that.
Thank you.
Because we have not had that as an issue in our community, but we could. And
absolutely,
and to know that you're thinking about that stuff, you're building the relationships to help us avoid that kind of stuff, is very comforting. And I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciate that.
I appreciate that.
Because it only takes one time.
Yep.
Right? One mistake ruins it for an entire community forever.
And one of the things we realize, and one of the things we talk to our officers about, a critical incident can happen in any community. Mm-hmm. You pray it doesn't. It could happen tonight.
Right.
And then we get the focus that maybe has been on another community. But you want to do everything you can to make sure your people are doing it right, so that if that focus ever comes down on you, what people see is this was still a bad situation, but they did what they had to do, and we trust them.
Yeah.
We trust them.
Absolutely.
And you have to build that up over time. You can't do it after the incident's occurred.
That's right.
It's too late
at
that point.
That's right.
But I appreciate you guys' help too, because you have been voices of common sense. in the community, and that's much of calm and common sense, and that's much appreciated. Amen. We appreciate your support.
That might be one of the better compliments we've gotten.
That might be the
common
only
sense. Yeah, that is not something we hear often. I appreciate that. I got some emails you can respond to.
That's right.
Well, I occasionally get emails like that too. I tell people that, my job as a police chief, if you're unhappy about something, and I'll be sorry I said this now, if you're unhappy about something, if your cat is sick, your flowers don't look good, you don't like the weather, I'm the police chief. Call me and tell me about it.
There you go.
I'm sure it's my fault.
Yeah.
That's that pity party routine.
I know that's right.
Well, you've answered a lot of questions that we've had about some really serious subjects and some stuff that's happening in our city and our nation right now. But having an experience of 51 years of police work, congratulations on that, by the way.
Yes.
I want to know. I want to know what that's been like. What is, and you said that you had to unclog a guy's toilet one night. What's the weirdest outside of that one?
Come on, that's
right?
pretty
What's
weird.
the weirdest call you've gone out on in your time as a police officer?
I would have to give that one some thought.
Yeah,
but I can think of one Halloween night going to an accident. It was a Volkswagen that was turned upside down, and there was a bumblebee kicking around in the Volkswagen trying to get out. It was a person. It was a bumblebee. And that one was pretty odd.
Yeah.
But I'd have to think on that for a while because
Okay.
there have been some odd ones. And one of the things we tell, I have a little speech I give, and I've given this to, a few police academies over the years, here and in Colorado, about things I wish somebody had told me many, many years ago. It'd make my life a lot easier as a policeman. One of the things I tell them, I am actually going somewhere with this. One of the things I tell them is, you've just gotten a free ticket to the greatest show on earth.
Oh yeah,
and
no
all
doubt.
3 rings are always full.
Yeah,
And there'll be sad things, and there'll be things that make you mad, but there are things that are just hilarious also. There are funny, there are amazing things that happen. And I don't know how many cops I've heard say, well, I'm going to write a book one of these days I'm going to write a book about this. They never do.
Right.
But it'd make a great book.
you got to wait till the statute of limitations is up. You can write the book on some of that stuff.
And that's something you didn't know about me. What I do is write books.
Really?
I just sent my 13th one off to the publisher.
What?
12 have been published, and number 13 is in the works.
You're kidding.
It's police procedural stuff. It wouldn't be exciting to the general reader, but it's everything from officer survival to leadership. I wrote one called Police Chief 101 with advice from a lot of police chiefs about how to be a police chief. And that's my hobby. Some people hunt, some people fish. I write.
Well, Chris has got a book he's been waiting to get published. Maybe you can help me.
Again, you keep lying to these good people, man.
Yeah. So how did you get into that as we just segue?
Well, my major in college was journalism.
Okay.
I thought wanted to be a reporter, but covering the police and fire beat as what they call a cub reporter while I was still in my senior year of college, I thought, wait a minute, this looks like fun. I want to do this instead of being a reporter. So I changed professions.
Wow.
Wow. And then, but the journalism training, I like to write. I learned how to write, I think, and I like to write.
Well, obviously, not everybody can get their book published.
Come on, not 12 times.
No.
Count plus 1.
Yeah, I've had some ideas in English class that got rejected out to half court, let alone send something to a publisher. That's pretty awesome.
Oh, man.
So
you couldn't make a living at it, but once a year you get a little royalty check from the publisher, and it makes you feel like you're doing something.
Yeah,
you
hey,
can go out and buy
man,
a
that's
toy.
huge.
Yeah, that is actually
It's
really
fun.
awesome.
It's fun.
Wow. So who was the journalist that you looked up to the most when you were in journalism school?
I thought Walter Cronkite was the man, and he was neutral. It took him retiring before you realized he was Democrat.
Yep.
Because you didn't hear any of that come through that the advocacy journalists of either the right or the left do today. Walter just told it straight.
Right.
And I think every young journalist wanted to be like Walter one day. And I don't see journalists like Walter Cronkite anymore. I really don't see that.
It doesn't pay to be that way anymore.
No, you've got to advocate for something. And one of the things my journalism teacher used to beat into our heads was report the news straight and let the public decide. And now one of the things you see, and I'm getting off on a tangent, is everything is advocacy journalism. Right. And I can't help but if I see a story on TV or I read a story in the paper, I'll say, aha, There he's putting opinion or editorializing into a news story, and it doesn't belong there.
Right.
But I digress.
Oh,
there is one guy that I think does that really well, and if you're not familiar with his stuff, he writes for Texas Monthly, and it's Skip Hollandsworth. That guy has written some incredible pieces. He just did a podcast. It's like, I think 6 or 7 episodes called Tom Brown's Body, about a kid that was found, like he went missing, and 2 years later they found his body just on the side of a road that they had searched several times with the whole community. They have no idea what's happening. It's in Canadian Texas, so right out there near where you grew up. And Skip tells the story in such a way that it's got all this up and down to it that you don't know, even as the story finishes. It's an unsolved mystery at this point. You have no idea who you should be pointing fingers at. Like, is it the mom? Is it this? And every other reporter that I've heard that's gone at that story has had a definite slant of like, this is who it is. Meanwhile, at the end of Skip's stuff, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I don't know what. I'm just angry I listened to this now, because I had more questions than answers at this point. So how do you think your interest in journalism, or your major in journalism, has affected or shaped your abilities as a police chief?
Well, I wanted to write things that I thought would help police officers. So several of my earlier books were on officer safety, officer survival, how to survive on the street, the things to do, the things not to do, the fatal errors that police officers make, how they get hurt or killed. And I've actually had a couple of letters over the years that, hey, I did something you said in your book, and I think maybe it kept me from getting hurt. And that makes you really feel good when you hear something like that.
Absolutely.
But I think that just kind of, I wanted to use whatever talent I had there, if there is any, for helping police officers.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely awesome. Well, Chief, thanks so much for coming in and spending some time with us. I'm going to have to go look for the Chief's books on Amazon now.
All 13.
13 of. So when is the 13th one getting published?
I just mailed it to the publisher last week, so it'll come back to me for proofreading, and I've got to do an index. So probably it would be maybe 5-6 months.
Okay.
Wow. Come on, Chief.
That's so awesome.
I know.
2021, Chief Garner's new book.
That's it.
Will be coming out. You can check out Chief Garner if you want to contact him at cityofcorinth.com. And then click on their departments tab on police, and his picture shows up there, as well as a list of his responsibilities, his email address. So when your flowers die or your cat gets sick, you can send him that
your
email.
Toilet gets stopped
yeah,
up.
your toilet gets stopped up. You can just have him, and then he'll send Officer Greg over to help you.
There you go.
And you guys will
there
be good.
Go.
Well, thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank
we really
you.
appreciate it, and
for
your service in the community. It's
Absolutely.
been invaluable.
Thanks a lot. I'd love to talk to you again sometime.
Sounds good.
Well, thanks. Well, hey, thanks everybody for listening to the Lake Cities podcast with Chris and Lucas. And if you have a topic that you would like for us to discuss, why don't you go ahead and send us an email at lakecitiespodcast@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to get those things addressed and to get somebody on our program that can discuss that a little bit more in depth, so we can all learn together how to make this a better community. Thanks for listening. We'll see y'all next week.
See you.
Chris and Lucas want to thank you for listening to the Lake Cities Podcast, a service provided by FBC Lake Dallas and Antioch Christian Fellowship. If you have a topic you would like for Chris and Lucas to discuss, email them at thelakecitiespodcast@gmail.com. Make sure you give us a review and click on the subscribe button to get the latest episodes each week.